I stared at the number on the monitor as it flashed from green to red. My performance score, a 43 out of 100. This can't be right, I whispered, feeling the air leave my lungs. Across the table, my boss Lane wouldn't meet my eyes. Her fingers tapped nervously against her tablet as the projector displayed my abysmal results to the empty conference room. Productivity below expectations. Communication ineffective. Team integration problematic. The words blurred together as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. I don't understand, I said. Last quarter, I scored an 87. I've led 2 major projects since then, both delivered ahead of schedule. Lane cleared her throat. The metrics don't lie, Penny. The metrics don't lie. But someone certainly had. I leaned forward, scrolling through the detailed breakdown. Numbers and assessments that contradicted everything I'd accomplished over the past year. Projects I'd rescued. Ideas that had saved the company thousands. All erased, replaced with fabricated failures. This is someone else's review, I insisted. It has to be. Lane finally looked at me, her face ashen. She glanced at the door, then back at her tablet. Something flashed across her screen that wasn't displayed on the projector. Her eyes widened. I need to. She stood abruptly, knocked over her water glass, didn't bother to write it. I need to check something. Wait here. Water pooled across the table, dripping onto my portfolio. I didn't move to stop it. My mind raced through possible explanations. A system error, a mix-up with another employee, some cruel joke. When Lane returned 7 minutes later, she was visibly shaking. Penny, she whispered, you need to leave the building. Now. She slid a printed document across the table, careful to avoid the puddle. Submit your resignation today. Don't delay. What are you talking about? My voice rose. I'm not resigning because of some obvious mistake. I'm not resigning because of some obvious mistake. It's not a mistake. She pushed the paper closer. Read this, but not here. Go home. You'll understand. I looked down at the paper. The header read, Strategic Talent Reduction, Implementation Plan, Penny Wesley. Lane gripped my arm, her nails digging in. They're watching. Go now. I never showed you this. The paper burned in my hand as I walked to my desk, grabbed my purse, and headed for the elevator. In the reflection of the metal doors, I caught a glimpse of the head of human resources watching me from the end of the hallway, speaking quietly into her phone. Hello to all my amazing listeners out there. If you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, wondering what happens next, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, this story gets so much more intense, and you won't want to miss a single detail of what happens when someone who thinks they have all the power suddenly realizes they've made a terrible mistake. Drop a comment if you've ever had that gut-wrenching moment when you realized someone was working against you. Now, let's get back to what happened after I left that building. My name is Penny Wesley. Until 3 weeks ago, I was the process improvement specialist at a manufacturing company that produces medical equipment. I'm 32. Single. With a degree in industrial engineering and a reputation for being thorough to the point of annoying. My grandmother called it being particular, which sounds nicer than obsessive, but both are accurate. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with more plants than furniture and a habit of working late into the night. My coworkers used to joke that I was married to my job. I guess that makes what happened a particularly nasty divorce. The drive home from the office that day exists in my memory as a series of disconnected images. Red traffic lights blurring through tears. My knuckles white against the steering wheel. The rumble of my tires on the shoulder when I had to pull over because I couldn't breathe. It wasn't until I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea growing cold beside me, that I finally unfolded the document Lane had risked her job to give me. Strategic Talent Reduction, Implementation Plan. Was corporate speak for something much uglier. As I read through the 5 pages, my hands trembled so badly that I had to place them flat against the table. The document detailed a 6-month plan to systematically destroy my confidence, reputation, and career. It included specific tactics, reassigning my successful projects to others, scheduling me for impossible deadlines, excluding me from meetings, then penalizing me for being uninformed, documenting fabricated performance issues. The final page included a timeline for my expected voluntary separation and a script for handling my exit interview. My crime? I had raised concerns about a new production process that prioritized speed over safety. I had data showing potential risks to both workers and patients. I had suggested alternatives that would cost more initially, but prevent problems long-term. The signature at the bottom of the document belonged to Weston, the chief operations officer who had personally praised my work just 2 months earlier. I read it 3 times, looking for some indication that this wasn't real. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my balcony watching the city lights, trying to reconcile the company I thought I knew with the one that had plotted my destruction. Dawn found me still there, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, my mind racing between disbelief, rage, and a deep, cutting hurt. By morning, I had convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Perhaps this was a draft someone had created but never implemented. Maybe it was meant for someone else. I would go back, demand answers, fight this. Then my phone chimed with an email. Acceptance of resignation from Human Resources. Thanking me for my verbal resignation given to Lane yesterday. Confirming my employment had been terminated effective immediately. I never gave any resignation. Another email followed minutes later. This one, from Weston himself, expressing regret at my decision to leave, but respecting my choice to pursue other opportunities. He hoped I would speak fondly of my time with the company and reminded me of the confidentiality agreement I had signed when hired. They were setting the narrative, creating a paper trail, erasing the truth before I could tell it. I tried calling Lane. No answer. I texted her. What's happening? Her reply came hours later. I'm sorry. I can't talk. They're saying you resigned. Did you? No, I typed back. They're lying. She didn't respond again. That afternoon, a courier delivered a box containing my personal items from my desk, along with a severance agreement offering 2 weeks' pay in exchange for waiving any claims against the company. I placed it unopened on the floor of my closet. For 3 days, I barely moved from my couch. I replayed every interaction, every meeting, looking for signs I had missed. Had Weston's smile been too tight when he complimented my presentation? Had my team members been avoiding me? When did I become a target instead of an asset? On the 4th day, my neighbor Terry knocked on my door. She worked in accounting at the same company but in a different building. She'd heard I'd quit. Everyone's talking about it, she said, sitting awkwardly on my unmade couch. They're saying you had some kind of breakdown during your review. I showed her the document. Her face paled as she read. Penny, she whispered. This isn't the first one I've seen. Terry sank deeper into my couch. About 8 months ago, I was reconciling some unusual expense reports, training seminars that didn't match any actual training, consultants with vague descriptions, special projects with no deliverables. She lowered her voice as if someone might be listening. I tracked the approvals. They all came from the executive team, authorized through a cost center called Talent Management Initiatives. I pulled my knees to my chest. How is this connected to what happened to me? The timing, Terry said. Every unusual expense was followed within days by a resignation. 23 in the past year. She paused. All high performers who had recently raised concerns about something. My mouth went dry. 23 people? That I could track. There might be more. Terry hesitated. One was my friend Alec from Product Safety. After he questioned the testing protocols on the new ventilator line, suddenly, he was getting written up for being late, missing deadlines he never even knew about. The room seemed to tilt. What happened to him? He quit after his performance review, said he couldn't handle the stress anymore. Her eyes met mine. 2 weeks later, he was in therapy for anxiety attacks. My tea had gone cold, forgotten on the coffee table. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, matching the chill spreading through me. Why would they go to all this trouble? I asked. Why not just fire people? Wrongful termination lawsuits, bad publicity. This way, on paper, troubled employees quit voluntarily. Terry reached for her bag. I shouldn't stay long. I'm probably next on their list for asking questions about the accounting. After she left, I sat in the growing darkness, letting the implications settle over me. Not an isolated incident. Not a mistake. A system. A strategy. 23 people before me. I opened my laptop and began searching social media for former employees. One by one, I sent messages. I recently left the company too. Would you be willing to talk about your experience? Most never replied. Some responded with variations of, I signed an agreement, or I've moved on. But 7 people agreed to meet. We gathered at a small cafe 10 miles from the office. I recognized some faces. Others were strangers. They worked in different departments, had different roles, but their stories followed the same pattern. They spoke up about something. Safety concerns, ethical issues, financial discrepancies, and suddenly became targets. Blake, a former quality inspector, showed us his performance reviews, stellar for 4 years, then plummeting after he questioned a change in testing standards. They scheduled my meetings during my daughter's recital, which they knew I couldn't miss, he said, then wrote me up for not being a team player. Mina, who'd worked in regulatory compliance, nodded. They moved my deadlines up without telling me, then criticized me for missing them. Did anyone fight back? I asked. Silence fell over the table. I tried, said Damien, a former engineer. Filed a complaint with HR. 2 days later, my entire team got an email about my personal issues affecting my judgment. I threatened legal action, said Rachel, her voice barely audible. The next day, my work computer was wiped clean. Every file, every email, gone. They said it was a system error. Rain streamed down the cafe windows, blurring the world outside. Inside, the 7 of us huddled over cooling coffee, comparing wounds inflicted by the same invisible hand. We should go public, I said finally. Together, with all our evidence. What evidence? Blake interrupted. My word against theirs? My performance reviews that they can claim were accurate? I need this reference for my new job, Mina added. I have kids, a mortgage. One by one, they explained why they couldn't risk it. Couldn't afford it. Couldn't endure it. I walked home alone in the rain, understanding now why the system worked so perfectly. It didn't just remove people. It isolated them, broke them, made them doubt themselves and fear fighting back. That night, I dreamed I was back in the conference room, water spreading across the table, rising higher and higher until I was drowning in it. Weston watching impassively from the doorway. I woke gasping for air. The next morning, an email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just an attachment, and the words, "You might find this useful." The attachment was a company organizational chart I'd never seen before. Unlike the public version, this one had red lines connecting certain executives to a separate structure labeled Special Projects Division. Weston's name sat at the top. Another email arrived minutes later. Northeast Parking Garage. Level 3. 4 p.m. today. And I debated whether to go. It could be a trap, or a cruel prank, or someone who actually wanted to help. After everything that had happened, trusting anyone seemed foolish. At 3:55 p.m., I parked on level 3 of the garage, keeping my engine running. At 4:02, a car pulled up 2 spaces away. The driver's window lowered just enough for me to recognize the face of Victor, the company's database administrator. A man I'd spoken to maybe twice in my 3 years there. Get in your back seat and lie down, he called softly. Make it look like you're getting something from the floor. I hesitated, then did as he asked. Through the gap between front seats, I watched him approach, open my passenger door, and slide something under the seat before walking away without a word. When I was sure he was gone, I retrieved what he'd left, a thumb drive labeled insurance. At home, I plugged it into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, emails, meeting minutes, HR documents, all related to the Strategic Talent Reduction Program. There were assessment rubrics for identifying challenging employees, scripts for managers, templates for creating performance issues, and a list of names. Employees who had been targeted, those currently in process, and those under evaluation for potential targeting. My name was there, along with all the people I'd met at the cafe. So was Victor's, marked as monitoring phase. He was helping me at tremendous risk to himself. I scrolled through file after file, rage building with each new revelation. The program had been running for nearly 5 years. Over 60 employees had been pushed out. The company had saved millions in severance they would have paid for layoffs, while avoiding any public relations issues or legal scrutiny. It was elegant in its cruelty, effective in its simplicity, and completely, utterly illegal. I stayed up all night copying files, organizing evidence, making notes. By morning, I had a clear picture of what had happened, not just to me, but to dozens of others. What I didn't have was a plan. Going to the media seemed obvious, but the company's extensive legal resources would crush me before any story gained traction. Filing a lawsuit might work eventually, but could take years and drain what little savings I had. More importantly, neither option would fix what had been broken. Not just careers, but lives. People like Alec, still struggling with anxiety. Like Rachel, who'd lost her home when she couldn't find another job quickly enough. I needed something more immediate, more impactful, something that would hit them where it truly hurt. For the next week, I barely slept. I reviewed every file, contacted more former employees, built a comprehensive understanding of how the system worked and who made it happen. The picture that emerged was even worse than I'd imagined. The company had 2 faces: the public one that won awards for innovation and workplace excellence, and the hidden one that systematically destroyed anyone who threatened its profit margins or exposed its shortcuts. Then I discovered something that made me pause. In 3 weeks, the company would host the annual Industry Excellence Summit, a prestigious gathering of executives, investors, and media from across the medical manufacturing sector. Weston was scheduled to deliver the keynote address on building a culture of innovation and integrity. The irony might have been amusing if it weren't so enraging. As I stared at the summit agenda, something clicked into place. An idea, dangerous, possibly career-ending for me, but potentially powerful enough to matter. I needed help. I called the group from the cafe, plus others I'd connected with since. 15 former employees agreed to meet at my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. Some brought partners for support. Others came alone, still carrying the weight of what had happened to them. What I'm about to propose isn't without risk, I began, standing before them in my small living room. If you want to walk away after hearing it, I understand completely. I laid out what I'd learned, what Victor had risked to share, and what I thought we could do. As I spoke, I watched their expressions shift from resignation to interest to something I hadn't seen before: hope. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then, Blake stood up. "I lost more than a job," he said. "I lost belief in myself. My daughter saw me cry for the first time." His voice cracked. "I'm in." One by one, others joined. Not everyone. Some had too much at stake. Too much to lose. I respected their choice and promised to protect their identities regardless. But 11 people stayed, gathering around my kitchen table as we began to plan. We worked through the night, mapping out every detail, anticipating obstacles, preparing contingencies. By sunrise, we had something that might actually work. Something that could expose the truth without risking legal retaliation. Something that might bring a measure of justice not just for us, but for everyone who would come after us if nothing changed. The plan hinged on the summit, the moment when the company would be most visible, most vulnerable to public scrutiny. We had 17 days to prepare. On day 3 of our preparations, Victor messaged me. "They're looking for the files. They know something's missing." On day 7, security protocols changing, new monitoring system being installed. On day 12, Weston asking questions about former employees. Be careful. They sensed something coming but didn't know what or from whom. The uncertainty made them nervous. It also made them careless. As the summit approached, our group met daily, refining our approach, supporting each other through moments of doubt and fear. Some had never stood up to authority before. Others had tried and been crushed for it. All carried scars from what the company had done to them. Working together began to heal something in each of us. Purpose replaced powerlessness. Solidarity overcame isolation. Even as anxiety about what we planned to do grew stronger, so did our resolve to see it through. The night before the summit, we gathered one last time to review everything. The room hummed with nervous energy. What if it doesn't work? Mina asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. What if we do all this and nothing changes? I looked around at these people who had become my allies, my friends. People who had every reason to stay hidden but chose to stand up. Then at least we tried, I said. At least we didn't let them win by staying silent. Rachel, who had barely spoken during our planning sessions, suddenly squared her shoulders. They took enough from me, she said. They don't get to take my voice too. We raised our glasses in silent agreement. As everyone prepared to leave, Blake pulled me aside. Are you sure about tomorrow? Once we start this, there's no going back. I thought about my sleepless nights, the panic attacks that now came without warning. The career I'd worked so hard to build, all destroyed by people who saw me as disposable. I'm sure, I said. See you tomorrow. After everyone left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the evidence we'd gathered, the plan we'd crafted. So many things could go wrong. So many ways we could fail. My phone chimed with a text from Victor. Security meeting just ended. They're adding guards for tomorrow's event. Someone's nervous. They should be, I thought. I packed my bag for the next day, hands steady despite everything. The summit began at 9 a.m. By noon, the company would never be the same. I just hoped we'd all still be standing when it was over. The summit was being held at the Grand Central Hotel, a gleaming glass structure downtown. I arrived 2 hours early as planned. The venue buzzed with staff arranging chairs, testing microphones, and hanging banners emblazoned with the company logo and the summit theme. Innovation with integrity. I nearly laughed at the irony. From my position near the registration table, I watched attendees filter in. Executives in expensive suits, industry journalists with press badges, investors eager to hear about the company's projected growth. None of them knew what was coming. Blake arrived at 8:15, nodding subtly as he collected his visitor badge. Mina and Rachel came together at 8:30, looking professional and unremarkable in their business attire. One by one, our group assembled, dispersing throughout the venue as we'd practiced, none acknowledging the others. At 8:45, my phone vibrated with a text from Victor. Weston just arrived. He's with the PR director and 2 security personnel. My heart rate spiked. Extra security hadn't been part of our calculations. I scanned the lobby, spotting 2 men with earpieces stationed near the main entrance. Would they recognize any of us from employee photos? Had security been briefed on specific threats? I texted the group. Security presence increased. Proceed with caution. By 9 a.m., the ballroom was nearly full. I took my seat near the back, close to an exit as planned. The program began with the company's chief marketing officer welcoming everyone and introducing the day's agenda. My palms were sweaty. I wiped them against my skirt. At 9:30, the first speaker took the stage, a renowned industry analyst discussing market trends. I barely heard a word, too focused on watching the room, tracking security, monitoring our team's positions. Rachel caught my eye from across the room, her face tight with anxiety. For a moment, I wondered if we should abort. The risks suddenly seemed overwhelming, the potential consequences too severe. Then I saw him. Weston, sitting in the front row, scrolling through his phone, completely at ease. The man who had signed off on destroying careers, lives, mental health, all to protect profit margins and silence legitimate concerns. My resolve hardened. We would proceed. At 10:15, there was a scheduled networking break. Attendees mingled in the foyer, balancing coffee cups and pastries, exchanging business cards. Our team moved into position for the next phase. I stationed myself near the ballroom entrance, watching the minutes tick by. At 10:29, disaster struck. Blake texted, "Security checking bags at bathroom exit." They saw the materials. My stomach dropped. Blake had been responsible for bringing part of our evidence, copies of the targeting documents for distribution at the critical moment. If security had confiscated them, I started calculating how much of our plan could still work without those materials when Blake appeared beside me, ashen-faced. "They have everything," he whispered. "They stopped me coming out of the restroom. Said they were doing random checks." "Did they see what was in the folder?" I asked. "I don't think so. They just took it for security reasons. But they asked for my ID, wrote down my name. This was bad, very bad. If they connected Blake to me or any of the others, the entire operation could unravel before it began." I texted the group, "Plan B, now." Plan B was riskier, less controlled, but still possible. Instead of distributing physical evidence during Weston's keynote, we would rely on digital methods and verbal testimony. Less impactful, perhaps, but harder to silence. As attendees filed back into the ballroom for the next session, I noticed 2 security guards speaking into their radios, scanning the crowd. They were looking for someone. For us. At 10:45, the company's human resources director took the stage to introduce the next speaker. My breath caught when I recognized her, the same woman who had been watching me from the hallway the day Lane told me to leave. "Before we continue," she said, her voice professionally pleasant, "a quick security announcement. We've been alerted to unauthorized materials being distributed at this event. If anyone approaches you with documents not provided by Summit staff, please notify security immediately." Murmurs rippled through the audience. The HR director smiled reassuringly. "Just a precaution. Now, please welcome our Vice President of Operations, who will discuss our award-winning safety protocols." My phone buzzed with panicked messages from our team. They know. Should we leave? Are they going to arrest us? I took a deep breath and typed, "Stay calm. Proceed as planned. They're nervous, which means we have power." For the next hour, I sat through presentations about the company's commitments to quality, safety, and employee development, all lies wrapped in glossy corporate language. My anger grew with each slide, each carefully crafted falsehood. At 11:50, the moment approached. Weston would take the stage at noon for his keynote address. Security presence had increased. I now counted 6 guards positioned around the room. I texted Victor. "Status?" His reply was immediate. "Ready." At 11:55, the HR director returned to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Chief Operations Officer, Thomas Weston, who will deliver today's keynote address, Building a Culture of Innovation and Integrity." Applause filled the room as Weston stood, buttoning his suit jacket, his expression confident as he approached the podium. Behind him, the giant screen displayed the company logo and his presentation title. And then it changed. The screen flickered, and suddenly, instead of Weston's prepared slides, it showed an internal email. His email. To the head of human resources. Subject line, Strategic Talent Reduction Program. The text was large enough for everyone to read. "The Wesley situation has been handled. Implement the exit strategy as discussed. Remember, this stays within the executive team only." Weston froze mid-step. The audience's confused murmurs grew louder as the screen changed again, displaying a list of names. 63 employees who had been targeted, along with the official reason for their departure and the real reason they'd been pushed out. My name was highlighted. Official. Voluntary resignation due to performance issues. Actual. Raised safety concerns about production line changes that would impact Q4 profits. Victor had come through. As the company's database administrator, he had access to the audiovisual systems. He had had broadcast access, and he just used that access to broadcast what was never meant to be seen. Weston spun around, staring at the screen in horror. "Cut the feed!" he shouted to the tech booth. "Cut it now!" But Victor had locked them out. The presentation continued, showing document after document, the templates used to fabricate performance issues, the scripts given to managers, the tracking system used to monitor the progress of breaking down targeted employees. The room erupted in chaos. Journalists pulled out phones, taking photos of the screen. Industry executives whispered urgently to each other. The security team rushed toward the tech booth, but the damage was already done. In the midst of the commotion, I stood up. "My name is Penny Wesley," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. "That's my name on the screen." I was targeted because I identified safety issues that might have reduced quarterly profits by 3%. All eyes turned to me. I felt a moment of terror, then strange calm. "I'm not alone," I continued. Around the room, others from our group stood. Blake Chen, targeted for questioning testing shortcut protocols. Blake Chen. Mina Jordan, targeted for reporting regulatory compliance concerns. Rachel Torres, targeted for documenting worker injuries resulting from accelerated production timelines. One by one, we introduced ourselves and our crimes. 11 former employees, standing tall among hundreds of industry leaders and media representatives. Weston's face had gone from shocked to furious. He pointed at me. "Security! Remove these people immediately." Before security could react, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Lane walked in, followed by 7 current employees, people I recognized from different departments. My former supervisor looked directly at me, then turned to address the room. "What they're saying is true," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "I was ordered to falsify Penny's performance review. I was told my own job depended on it." She held up a folder. "I have the documentation to prove it." The security team hesitated, looking to Weston for direction. He had gone pale, eyes darting between the screen, still displaying evidence, the former employees standing throughout the room, and the journalists furiously taking notes. "This is absurd," he finally sputtered into the microphone. "These are disgruntled former employees making unfounded accusations. This presentation has been hacked, the documents fabricated." That's when Rachel stepped forward, pulling out her phone. "I recorded our meeting," she said. "The one where you told me either I quit or you'd make sure I never worked in this industry again. Would you like me to play it?" She didn't wait for an answer, instead pressing play on a crystal-clear recording of Weston's voice. "Your choice is simple, Rachel. Resign quietly. Or, we'll ensure your reputation is so damaged no company in this sector will touch you. We've done it before." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Investors began quietly leaving their seats, heading for the exits. The company's stock price would be plummeting as news spread. Weston grabbed his phone, frantically texting someone, likely the legal team. Too late. The story was already out, being captured by every journalist in the room. The head of human resources attempted damage control, taking the microphone. "We take these allegations very seriously and will conduct a thorough investigation." Blake cut her off. "You're named in 37 of the documents currently displayed behind you. You personally designed the psychological targeting protocols." At that moment, hotel security arrived, different from the company's private security team. The event manager approached the stage. "We've received reports of a disturbance. These individuals are trespassing," Weston said quickly. "They need to be removed." The manager looked uncertain, surveying the scene. The incriminating documents still displayed, the journalists recording everything, the mixture of current and former employees standing their ground. "Actually," said a voice from the back, "I believe what we're witnessing may be evidence of corporate malfeasance and workplace harassment on a systemic scale." A woman stepped forward, pulling out a business card. "Charlotte Reed, Department of Labor. I was invited to hear about your company's exemplary workplace practices." She smiled thinly. "I'm very interested in continuing this conversation." The revenge wasn't in the public humiliation, though that was satisfying. It wasn't in watching Weston's carefully constructed facade crumble before his peers, though that felt like justice. The true revenge came 3 weeks later, when the board of directors announced a complete leadership overhaul following an independent investigation. Weston and 5 other executives were terminated. The Strategic Talent Reduction Program was exposed in a front-page investigation. Class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of all targeted employees. The company implemented a whistleblower protection program and established an independent ethics committee with real authority. They reached out to former employees with offers of reinstatement, back pay, and public apologies. I didn't go back. Neither did most of us. But we had accomplished something that mattered. Not just personal vindication, but systemic change that would protect others. 6 months later, I started my own consulting firm, specializing in ethical workplace practices and employee advocacy. My first clients? Former colleagues who had been through the same ordeal. The last time I saw Lane, she had been promoted to director of the newly formed Employee Advocacy Department. "We're building something better," she told me. Something real this time. I believed her. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, but transforming it into something that can never hurt anyone else again. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of justice and transformation. Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice or stood up against a broken system? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, your voice matters. Sometimes it's the only thing powerful enough to create real change. Thank you for listening to my journey from targeted employee to architect of accountability.